To make a very long story short, my friend has a sister with some mental health issues that I'm not privy to. She got pregnant a little over a year ago and claimed I was the father. I knew this was BS because A, I've never hugged her, let alone had intimacy with her, and B, at the time she would have gotten pregnant, she was staying at a friend's place for a month. She refused a prenatal paternity test, so I was clear I wasn't signing anything or having anything to do with the kid. My parents found out and it got ugly. They said they never raised me to be a deadbeat, said I couldn't drop the ball, lots of very nasty comments from all three of us, I admit. Finally, when she was about 6 months along, they said they couldn't keep me in their lives if I were trying to skip out on being a dad and they disowned me. My mom was there when she gave birth, and not long after a paternity test showed it wasn't mine. My parents have been blowing up my phone, apologising, offering money, and anything to get me to forgive them. I kept some money they sent me, a few hundred, and said that if they were willing to disown me over that, I wouldn't open myself up to another risk. Most of my friends support me, but a few others, as well as my therapist, said I should give them another chance. Not the idiot. They failed as parents and took the word of a random over the word of their son. If you do end up giving them another chance, make sure they know how badly they screwed up. They showed you who they are. Believe them. They're not on your side and don't deserve another chance. Not to mention, your mom was at the birth. Boy, your parents seem to want this to be true. I think that's precisely what it is. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just wait 3 months to do the DNA test OP is adamant he's willing to take and decide from there? Why else would you behave so irrationally about this? In my experience, some people act really backcrap crazy and unreasonable about becoming grandparents. Usually it's people who are trying to fill some void from the guilt of how they raised their own kids. I'd bet money OP's an only child, and now the parents are realizing that they aren't going to get to become grandparents unless OP forgives them. Life is not a romantic film. It's not always the case that an apology fixes everything. Dude, the only person in your shoes is you. Nobody else. Therapist, family members, friends. Nobody gets to tell you that you should forgive your parents or have contact with them. Get a new therapist ASAP. No professional would tell someone to ignore their boundary in this situation. Not only that, but I would also consider reporting them. It's highly unprofessional and unethical, and who knows how many people might have been harmed by their advice. It's never the role of the therapist to tell you what to do, and this kind of behavior may put many people at risk, especially if someone is a victim. Just a note, when I was 16, my grandparents gave me a disowning as my 16th birthday present. It came in a nice card and everything. Opened it up and it read, "You are dead to us," and had some accusatory stuff because they didn't like my dad. It was wild. My kid brain didn't understand it, but I reacted in a way they didn't expect. Sort of like you, OP. I wrote them a letter back and said, "Okay, I will respect your disowning of me. I am now dead to you. I understand, but I'm holding you to it. You want me out of your life? Okay, I am out forever. Don't come back. You did this. Stick to it." Of course, they didn't stick to it. They came back just like your parents. They didn't even have the decency to admit a mistake, though. They just sent me a crate of presents and expected to buy their way back in. No apology needed. I rejected the box of gifts. Most of my family is freaked out about this too. All the people who are making you feel bad about this, they don't know your heart. They'll tell you you will regret it, but you won't. Importantly, it's been 35 years since they disowned me, and I have never regretted it. I have been married to my wife for 5 months, living together for almost a year before marriage. My stepdaughter, Anne, teen, used to split time between her parents but is currently with us full-time as her father will be overseas until August. I also have a son, Leo, nearly adult, who lives mostly with my ex-wife and with me on weekends. The kids go to different schools and have a decent relationship. My wife and Anne are great cooks. My wife's parents came from another country and she and Anne regularly make exotic dishes from their homeland, which are delicious. My son and I appreciate the dishes, though we still have problems learning what is what. A few days ago, Leo stopped by for something he'd left. Nobody was home, so he let himself in. Leo said there was a big pot of stew on the stove and it smelled delicious, and he asked if he could have some. My wife or I often made a huge batch of food when they cooked, so it was nothing surprising. I told Leo to go ahead and just leave some for us. Now, Leo is a wrestler, and he eats a lot. A while later, he sent me a photo showing me how much stew was left in the pot. I could tell there were at least 5 servings left, so I thought nothing of it. An hour later, Anne called me upset. She asked me if I'd eaten the stew she made. It was a special recipe from her grandma and she invited her friends over to try it. She said the stew was supposed to feed 9 people and she invited 6 friends, but someone obviously had eaten almost half of her stew. I told her it was Leo and apologised, telling her she could order pizza for her friends and I would pay for it. Anne said it was poor compensation for her friends looking forward to her stew, which she spent hours preparing, but she did take my offer. When I later apologised and had Leo call to apologise, she said she accepted our apologies, though she's been relatively quiet around me. My wife later told me I shouldn't just allow Leo to eat whatever he wants in our kitchen, as sometimes she and Anne have plans for their dishes. I think it's utterly ridiculous that Leo isn't allowed to eat things from his own father's kitchen, and if my wife or Anne has a special plan for their food, they should just put a note on it. Otherwise, things in the kitchen should be up for grabs, as the kitchen is a communal space for food, and I pay for most of the groceries. I think if Leo isn't allowed to have the food, then it's like he's not part of the family. I'm willing to talk to him about portion control, but other than that, I think he should be able to eat what he wants in the kitchen, unless there's a note saying not to. Am I the idiot? Was putting a note on it a previous rule, or did you make that up to excuse your rudeness? Do you do the meal plan for each week, deciding what to cook and how much to buy to serve all? Do you do all the grocery shopping? Do you cook every meal? Did you cook this one? Did you replace the ingredients so she can make it again, or ask what she wants to make next time? He took half a pot of food that you thought was meant for 3 people staying there and turned out to be 9 portions worth. That's simply inconsiderate. You are the idiot and you and your son have no manners. Prepared food that is still cooking is not up for grabs before the meal. Of course, since you rarely cook, you don't appreciate their effort. It's unbelievably rude just to declare a dish for everyone. I can't imagine cooking a dish for friends and a family member just assuming they can eat half. It's not how it works. I'm leaving the son out of it because he asked, which is the correct thing to do. You would assume your father would know whose food it is and not just assume. I think it's the dad who needs to cook more. Yeah, the dude knew his son had a wrestler's appetite. He could have ordered a large pizza for his son instead of ruining his stepdaughter's dinner party plans. This reeks of good old-fashioned male chauvinism with a side of weaponized incompetence. I, male 38, met my wife 36 10 years ago when she was a widow with a toddler son. We got married 7 years ago and have a young grammar school-aged daughter together. I love my wife and daughter, but I don't feel the same way about my stepson, Tween. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate or mistreat him, I just don't see him as my son. I'm actively involved in his life. I pay for his school, I take him to his activities, play with him and help him when needed, but I don't feel that the connection between us is that of a father and son. He's more like a nephew than a son to me. My wife knows this and she's unhappy about it. She says he already sees me as a father. What got to me was when she suggested that I legally adopt him and call him my son. She says I'm creating a difference between him and my daughter, which I consider untrue since I try to avoid favoritism. I suffered from this myself. My parents preferred my younger brother, and I won't make that mistake with him. I'm doing my best to be a good stepfather, but I can't force a feeling that doesn't exist. I don't want to legally adopt him because I don't want to take on a heavy responsibility that isn't mine. I don't want to call him my son because I don't want to lie to him or myself. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. I suggest you talk to a therapist about why you can't feel a connection with a kid you raised. You've been in this kid's life and been his father for a decade, which at this point is the overall majority of it. Not acknowledging him as your son is a major rejection. If you can't figure out the root of the issue, you're going to push him away as he gets older because he will feel that rejection. I think the root of this problem is, only my genetically related children are my actual children. All others I tolerate. So, if your wife were to pass away, would you still care for this boy who currently lives with you? No? What is heavy responsibility? He's living with you and you're paying for things for him, unless your wife is the one paying extra in bills for him. That doesn't make sense. You are showing favoritism and I bet the poor boy knows you treat him differently than your biological child. I don't want to call him my son because I don't want to lie to him or myself. Opie says this a few sentences after saying he avoids favoritism. This poor kid. My heart breaks for him having such a terrible guy as the only father figure he's ever known. Look, you shouldn't adopt him if you're not feeling it, but also, don't be surprised if your wife divorces you over this. My husband and I have been married for 4 years and have a toddler son, and I have 2 teen daughters from a previous relationship. He loves them and treats them like his own. The problem is that his family never accepted my daughters as family, but it's always been low-key until this Thanksgiving. My husband's brother was transferred to England for work and recently completed the renovation of his house in Mayfair. He was telling us about his life there, and the conversation went to a mall called Harrods. He went on and on about how beautifully it was decorated for Christmas and how it was unlike anything he'd ever seen. All of the nieces and nephews and a few in-laws got excited, and eventually they wanted to go. He said they were welcome to stay at his new house, and the kids were begging their parents to go throughout Thanksgiving. Eventually, about a dozen kids got to go to England for a week during their break to stay with my brother-in-law. He offered to pay for the kids whose parents couldn't afford tickets for big families and offered to cover the cost of their stay. My daughters were not invited, which made me mad. I pulled my husband aside to remind him that we're married and part of this family too. He asked his brother if our girls could go, and his brother flat out told him that he was not going to take responsibility for 2 teen girls. I called out his BS and pointed to the fact that several of the kids who were going are teen girls. We argued until my husband begged me to drop it. Last night he brought up looking for flights back to his parents for Christmas, which is when I told him we were not going because of the way they treated us during Thanksgiving. We discussed it until I told him I'd reconsider if his brother apologized, but I knew his brother wouldn't. He's one of those guys who thinks he's everyone's boss and is never wrong. I know I'm right to defend my daughters, but not seeing his family for Christmas is making my husband sad. Should I give in and allow us to go? I'm only referring to Harrods as Harold's from now on. Thanks, OP. However, why would you want to send your teen girls on a long trip to another country with an unrelated adult male who does not see them as family or his responsibility? How is that a safe or logical choice? To be crammed into a house with a bunch of people who see them as second-class citizens and no one to stand up for them? Why are you advocating for this? Even if they were invited from the beginning, you should have declined. You sound entitled. You joined the family 4 years ago. Your daughters live more than half their lives outside of this family. You are the idiot, OP. Yes, they're the family and should be treated as family, but this trip is a big thing for your brother-in-law to do. It's not like he's offered to take them all out for ice cream except your kids. If he's not comfortable, he's not comfortable. Start your own family tradition in your own home. Holidays do not have to include extended family. As your daughters are not biologically related, I get why he said no, but there could have been some compromise on another trip maybe. If your husband needs his family during the holidays, let him go alone while you enjoy your holiday with your children and any family or friends you have. You don't need your husband to have a good time. Oh, poor husband. Your daughters get rejected by his awful family and now it's Christmas. He can't catch a break. Would your husband be happier with you and the kids gone permanently? That's some BS, mainly from your husband since he knows his brother. He and his whole family are the idiots. I hope you and your kids have a wonderful Christmas. You are not the idiot. My son has a young teen daughter, Clara, and a teen stepdaughter. My son isn't in a good financial situation, and while they do their best, they can only afford necessities. A few days ago, Clara visited us, and we talked. I asked her about school, and she told me that she's having a lot of problems because she needs a computer for some of her homework. She needs to visit the library, which is far away from their home, to do her homework. Also, kids are making fun of her for not having a phone. As a grandmother, I can't just watch my granddaughters struggle, so even though we aren't in a very good financial situation, we use some of our savings to buy a MacBook, phone, headphones, and a few school supplies for her, and she was obviously very happy when she received our gifts. However, this has caused problems because my daughter-in-law is mad that we didn't do the same for her daughter. We told her that instead of getting upset, she could ask her child's grandparents to buy things for her, and she called us idiots. My son informed her that daughter-in-law has been trying to get Clara to share, but they've refused. Not the idiot. Your son and his wife should not show favoritism. You have the right to contribute as you like. Clara needed it. Does the step-granddaughter want it just because Clara has it, or does she truly need it as well? Also, you say that step 1 has 2 sets of grandparents alive. Are they treating both children equally? Blended families are difficult to manage, but it's the parents who want to blend. You have to respect their decision, but in my opinion, you can choose how you spend your resources on them. You are the idiot big time. How cruel you are. And hearing that your blood granddaughter won't share with her stepsister shows that she's learning from you. Neither one of you is the main character. You probably could have bought 2 less pretentious computers for the price of a MacBook. I say this as a person who has had both and finds the MacBook overpriced. As a grandmother, I would have gifted the computer to the parents, the phone to the granddaughter, and something else to the step-granddaughter. Their household is now a hostile environment thanks to you.